Okay, I'm going to call this meeting of the Salt Lake City Human Rights Commission to order. This is Tuesday, October 3rd, 2023, and we are at 5:34 p.m. Start off with taking a roll call. I am the chair, Jason Wessel, representing District 1. And let's just go counterclockwise around the table, and then we'll go to the people online.
Will Terry, representing District 4.
Jenny Mayer, Glenn, District 5.
Michelle Mooney, Equity Manager, Salt Lake City Mayor's Office.
Maria Romero, Executive Assistant.
Hello, Chris Macias, and we got this put in the news office.
Nancy Inter, Observer with League of Women Voters.
And David Lita, District 6.
Okay,
Let's go to Esther.
Esther Stoll, District 2.
Pamela.
Pam Silberman at large.
Okay, that has 3, 4, 6 commissioners present, so we have 4. So next item on our agenda is to approve and adopt the minutes. If everybody's had an opportunity to look at the minutes, we'll entertain a motion from a commissioner to approve and adopt those minutes.
Motion to approve.
Okay, Will has made the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Mayor Clayton has seconded. All right, all in favor, wave your hand.
Oh, yeah.
All right, is anybody in objection? Looks like Esther's objecting because she didn't say anything.
No, I.
All right, yeah, gonna recognize that passes unanimously. That brings us to the public comment phase. Is member for public, we should make a comment?
no,
We'll delay we'll come back to this in a minute because we do have another member of the public who is in the restroom, so we'll carve out some time when he returns. Let's see, we can just pause for a moment and Chris will come back to your item. Let's skip ahead to the Human Rights Day update, if that'll take us 5 minutes.
yeah, it will. Okay, so just for the Human Rights Day, so like I mentioned before, we were applying for sponsorships from Echoes and Zions Bank. So Echoes is unable to support us this year. So it's kind of relying on, while we do have funds from the mayor's office, I'm waiting for Zions Bank to get back to us. So if any of you know of someone who would want to partner for this event, it is a big milestone celebration and just we can cut back on stuff, of course. Like I always have a plan in place, but if we can make it as extravagant as we would like it to be, that would be better, right? 75th anniversary, we probably won't celebrate anything big till like what, 100 years, so.
Has Zions turned us down, or we just waiting to hear?
Waiting to hear back, so I sent a follow-up today, that was sent on August 16th by our grant analyst, and I have a connection with someone that works at Zions Bank that will kind of tap their charitable giving person and see what they say.
What are the sponsorship levels, the tiers?
So it's not really a tier, what we applied for from Echoes and Zions was 5,000 each, because we were thinking if they say, they can only say less, right? So that's what so it's not, any donations are welcome at this point, I just know we have to go through a formal process, cause I
So
think.
we're looking for a $5,000 sponsor, is that the bottom line?
Or whatever, like it's not a set thing, that's just what we asked for from those two.
Could you send me what you send out to them or what the process is? And I think I could maybe find someone or maybe 2 sponsors.
So it has to come from our grant analyst.
It has to be
Yeah.
your analyst, okay?
And it's come from which list?
Huh?
Which list does it have to come from?
No, our grant analyst for the city needs to send an email.
Oh, it has to,
Like
so we
it's-
can't solicit.
I would have to follow up on that, I'll ask her, cause she did mention something about if the commissioners wanted to donate, that would be a different process, ask for donations, but I know we can't
Are we doing this again at the Sorensen Center?
no, at the Gallivan Center.
Oh, the Gallery, okay.
How about the governor's office?
I can reach out. I guess because it's a Salt Lake City event, I don't know.
It's
I could
also,
see.
it's Human Rights Day in celebration of the 75th anniversary of Human Rights Day. It might be something that somebody from their human rights office or the office of the governor might be interested in helping to support.
I could check in and see if all Utah wants it too.
And Rocky Mountain Power is another good one.
Real corporate Chevron, they're throwing money around like crazy.
Do they just have things online? Like,
Like for Rocky Mountain,
yeah,
I could
What is
probably do a warm handoff, like to a human to human.
yeah,
I mean, via email,
I know.
but name to name rather than filling out a form.
So they've got two different grant managers.
Yeah, they've got their
they-
foundation and then
trade
they've
off.
got they've got two separate things, and I do know that, and I'm not sure who we work with, I'll find out.
Yeah.
I was also thinking of Jim Sorensen, the Sorensen Foundation. Because he's been a big supporter of community involvement activities. I know him personally, so, but I don't know if I can solicit.
Okay, so I will get back to you all, I will connect with Sarah one more time, I just wanna know the protocol, I feel like she mentioned something that although we're a government entity, we have a foundation, that foundation can possibly take donations, but I just wanna get clarity on that process, because I didn't think we would have to go this route, honestly, so, but she did explain it to me, I just have to follow up and get clarity, and I
Well,
can
if
send
she's
you
the
all-
one that has to do the solicitation, so he asked, we've gotten 3 or 4 good suggestions already. Governor's
Right.
Office, Rocky Mountain, Chevron, Jim Sorensen. You know, if she or he needs contact information in order to get a hold of those folks, I'm sure we can help in that regard.
Okay, yeah.
Just get
I think it's more of a formal process, like you all outside of this commission are just members of the community, so that's where she did tell me the difference. I can't recall that right now,
Okay,
So
so,
let's get that clarified quickly.
Yeah, I will.
A lot of these organizations have a tight deadline on when they can give money and cannot.
And Michelle, is there a fundraising goal, like as part of the planning for the event, is there like a budget yet or anything like that?
yes, the budget has been created and that was consisting of awards, the linens, the venue, we have to pay for the Gallivan, but we do get it discounted as the mayor's office. So we were looking at 10,000.
that's the budget?
Yeah.
How much of that's coming from the mayor's office?
I have to confirm with them. But last year when I put in the request for Human Rights Day this year, I put in 5,000 because we went over that last year, or we met about that last year. But Sorensen Center was also free. Gallivan, the best they can do because they have to basically get revenue, they're giving us a nonprofit rate basically. And a discount.
What is Galvin charging us? Roughly?
Like 3100.
So 31,
So you pay for each individual, like you're not paying for the venue, you're paying for like the tables, the chairs,
No, I understand, but you're basically saying a third of the budget is gonna go to Galvin just for the rent.
if we only have to go off mayor's office files, then yes.
Is that enough?
Well, that's why I did not expect to be here, so we really worked through reviewing the grants and everything, we thought it was a very compelling argument, but I think with Echoes, they just have other, the phrasing they used was other worthy cases right now. So with Zions, I don't know what they'll say, but even if they're able to do 5,000 or even less than that, at least we're better off, so we can make tweaks anywhere else, like food. The awards are pretty much set and the linens, cause I just did that off numbers last year, so everything else.
I'll make some beans.
So that's it for that update, I did write that all down and I will follow up with Sarah and get that to you all. Because she did say that you all as commissioners can basically, like me as a city employee cannot do that, so we have to go through the process, that's what I'm trying to say.
Well, tell us what we need to do and we'll get on top of it, because we're kind of at crunch time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Have we finished the process of soliciting awardees.
That's,
No, that's ongoing right now.
yeah,
That's next on the agenda.
it'll be,
Well, you all should have did you all get the calendar invite with? I don't know if I sent, this was a while ago though, when I sent it to the mayor's office staff, did I send you all
I
that?
don't
think so.
What was it for? Was it just?
Okay, yes, so,
For Human Rights Day, but there should be, you should have a link to, it's live on the
so
website.
Jason accepted, Jennifer, Will, Esther. So you all should see that, I can resend this out. But all the links for the nominations are on that calendar invite too, just in one place, but I can send it in an email as well.
Calendar invite for what, this meeting?
No, Human Rights Day on
Human
December
Rights
second.
Day.
Yeah, December, first week of December.
It has the full agenda and all of that,
Is this December 9th or 7th?
second.
Hey, Michelle, I don't have that with a link, so if you could resend it, I would appreciate that, so we could do the
Okay.
nominations.
Yeah, and I have the event on my calendar, but I think I created it, and I didn't accept an invitation from you, so I don't think I got an invitation.
Okay, it went to all the members, but I will send it
Well,
again.
I may have just gotten
Yes,
junk or something, I don't know.
yes, so I just sent it.
Okay.
And on the bottom of that, I can send an email, but it's on the calendar invite, the nominations, and you could just copy it. Like, at least the calendar invite will never get lost. It'll be on the calendar. So if you can send those out, we're already live, it's been in community newsletters for community outreach and our diversity, equity, and inclusion team, as well as social media posts tomorrow. That's what our comms team said they will do. So
Hyperlinks here at the bottom.
Yeah, I see that now.
each one is a hyperlink, each one is a different application.
Okay,
Okay, yeah,
Anything else?
we can move on.
all right, so let's go back up to item 3 on the agenda, we got the public comment. We skipped over something since you were in the restroom, like introduce yourself, and if you had anything you wanted to bring to our attention, or put you on the spot.
First of all, we'll apologize, because I was led to believe that the State Martin Luther King Human Rights Commission was meeting here, and so it was my intent to meet with that group, but this is equally as special to be able to meet with you all. But my name is Dr. Forrest Crawford. I been actively involved in this community for many, many years, and I actually was a co-founder of the State Martin Luther King Jr. Human Rights Commission, along with some other organizations that I've worked with in the community here. I was a faculty member at Weber State University. I taught in the teacher education department since 1977. I recently retired just a couple of years ago. I recently retired from Weber State, so I've just been doing community work since that time. Right now, I'm doing some work with Utah Highway Patrol, doing some equity training for their officers as they are assigned to the field. But mostly I just kind of keep my eyes and ears open and just kind of nosy about what's going on in the community for the most part. That's probably more what's driven me here than anything else. I didn't, I got a copy of your agenda, and I had noticed that it said Human Rights Commission, but I said, that's all right, they really talking about Martin Luther King Human Rights Commission, and I didn't know there was the actual Human Rights Commission, and so I feel very special about being here, and thank you for having me sit and just listen and be nosy, as y'all go through your agenda, but I just want you to know that I support your efforts, and I've been actively involved in this community since 1972. But since retirement, it's just given me an opportunity to kind of be more picky and more selective about which organizations to sit in on and be a part of and that kind of a thing. And so I think probably more by accident than by design that I find myself here. And so thank you for that.
Well, I want to welcome you to the meeting, and I think it's very timely that you're here. My question for you, Mr. Crawford, is, as a person involved for over 50 years in this community, with your focus being human rights and civil rights, what do you see as the most pressing human rights or civil rights issues facing Salt Lake City today?
Facing Salt Lake City.
Because this is a Salt Lake City commission.
Good question. I mean, I think it's a variety of issues. My opinion, without having to rely on any reputable, written source, my personal opinion is, I think that we need to do a better job of making sure that people with our disability community have proper access and they're able to attend and be a part of not only public programs, but meetings and so forth. So I would say rights for the disability community. I would also say that human rights that really focuses on the uplift and the elevation of our ethnic communities here. And I think that while Salt Lake City does a pretty good job of acknowledging the diversity in our community across our state, I think that we can do a much better job of underscoring the particular emphasis that these groups are taking to ensure that equity, stays front and center, in the community. And so I would say to make sure that we are aware that that Human Rights Commission have a good relationship with the various ethnic commissions and the leadership as part of those organizations. I would say then the only other thing that just kind of crosses my mind just off the top is making sure that when we have public events, that those public events have a proper representation. I've been to enough public events to where everybody's excited about the public event and everything, and I'm going like, yeah, okay, but where's our folks, And so I just think that we need to do a much better job of reaching out to those communities to ensure that representation. And I'm sure that there are other ideals, but just, without having to take so much of your time, just those three things just kind of, come to mind, but I look forward to spending much more time with you all and celebrating the projects and programs that you all emphasize in the community.
Well, thank you for those comments.
Yeah, thank you for asking.
I can interject for a moment. I believe that we met about 24 years ago when I was,
You and
I was Dwayne Bordeaux's intern when we were working to get Martin Luther King Day as a state holiday. I was trying to place where I recognized you from. I think that was what we didn't get it done that time, but a few years later, I think is when we finally got it over the hump and got it done as a state holiday. But
Quite an impressive memory.
yeah.
And we've met a couple times too. I worked with Kathy Christie at the Salt Lake School District for a lot of years. I was a teacher and administrator.
Oh my goodness, okay. Yeah, in fact, Kathy Christie and I worked together on the law enforcement equity training. Yeah, she and I teamed on that project.
I loved working.
And if you are interested, we do have the Racial Equity and Policing Commission as part of Salt Lake City.
It's called Racial Equity
Racial Equity in Policing. It's part of Salt Lake City boards and commissions. It's also a disability commission. It focuses specifically on disability equity issues. So a lot of your concerns are being addressed by Salt Lake City. Human Rights Commission is more kind of an umbrella one that is over a couple of those or aside a couple of those commissions. But a lot of the topics that you're very interested in have their own committees, boards, or committee boards and commissions devoted to them.
Okay, yeah, thank you for mentioning that. Thank you, ma'am.
All right. Sorry, Chris, we've been making you sit here and listen to us, but we can get to the language access update.
And that's no problem at all. I found all these conversations quite fascinating, and I think the work that you'll do is amazing. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to join you all today. So again, my name is Chris. I am the language access coordinator for the city. In just a moment, you will learn all about what that means exactly. So let's go ahead and jump right into that. Michelle, I do have some slides to share with you all. You can pull those up.
So can everybody hear well online?
Maybe it's bigger from the PDF. You're not seeing what I see.
Is this, which format are you using? Is it Zoom? Teams?
Zoom. Do you have just,
So.
I have the PDF, that's why.
Yeah, that's
Usually,
So when you hit share screen, you should just select that window only instead of screen, and that window pops up instead of.
Yeah.
And if you want, you can do full view, or this will work fine for everybody can see it.
okay, where is that? Sorry.
We're
usually I
at the
use
little home button at the very top on the left. Far left.
Chris?
Yes, the one that looks like a house.
Yeah.
Yo, sorry, there's a lot going on my screen, so.
I can point to it. And then
The
Hey,
house.
Chris.
Yes.
Okay, now.
So I just learned something today with the spelling of your name. That's really cool.
Oh, yeah. I get asked a lot, how do we pronounce that? It's just Chris.
Yeah.
Traditionally would, so.
You are the right person for language access.
Thank you.
Is this
We
the-
learn immediately from your name. And that's really neat.
I think that's fine. If everybody can see that, we'll just continue like this. Okay, thank you. So go ahead and click to the next slide, please. So quickly, what is language access? So this refers to providing folks who are limited in their English proficiency or speak languages other than English, or as we like to internally call folks, English language learners. And this is for us to provide different tools so that folks in our community can access all of our programs and services as a city, right? So regardless of the language they speak, the official definition of it is taking reasonable steps to provide meaningful access. You might be thinking, what the heck does that mean? That's super vague, and you're correct. So we kind of like that it is vague because per community, per municipality, we can create our own plan to implement what that means. So actually, it's a good thing because it's catered to our own communities. So this just, when we have an actual language access plan, we know that our communities can be more integrated into the services that we provide as a city. We know that they can thrive when they understand information efficiently and when they're getting simply access to all the resources that we have. Next, please. So when do we use language access? Of course, the basic foundation of it all is to assist a person who is not communicating English or is limited in communication in English, to provide cultural linguistic relevance. Many times when we translate documents or flyers or information, it may have things in English that are not relevant to other languages, such as metaphors or acronyms. And so we have to provide the right relevance. It's not just about rote translation, but about being relevant. We want to reduce and remove language barriers. We want to design language content appropriately. So that could mean, depending on the type of flyer or event or document that you have, what's it going to look like? Do you do a front and back? Do you do multiple languages at once? Do you do everything separately, one document in English, a whole document in another language, etc. We plan for events with language access. So we think ahead of time which communities are likely to attend, and we provide interpreters. Do we have folks present that can assist? To request interpreters, of course. And finally, the last two there is for greater accessibility. Ultimately, the goal of language access is to make our local municipality and our commissions and all of our programs less intimidating to everyone, regardless of the languages they speak. And it's because it's their civil rights. Next slide, please. By the way, if at any point you have a question or comment, feel free to interrupt. I really like a discussion, so let's do that instead of me talking and talking.
Just real quick,
Yes.
I was listening to a podcast earlier today that was talking about using AI, where they're going to have real-time translation from one language to another, where it would be two people be able to speak in real time to each other. Can you elaborate on that? Is that something you're familiar with?
Absolutely, yeah. So a quick background for myself before I answer that. I am a certified interpreter. I do speak Spanish fluently, both the literate, meaning reading and writing, and also the spoken version. I acquired a third language in my adulthood. I speak Portuguese as well. And so I have that as a conversational aspect to it, but not as a certification. And I say that because I understand the intricacies of what it takes to be an interpreter. I've done a lot of medical interpreting, real estate interpreting, and now stuff in general for the city as well. And it's a difficult skill to have. In fact, in the world of language access, we actually try to compensate as much folks for a job skill versus just a talent. So speaking another language is not just because you know it, but it's something that you're employing now, and so we want to pay you to compensate. So when we approach it that way, and we look at things like artificial intelligence, now using machine learning and other things like that, it's difficult to find where we draw the line. This is a learned skill versus something can just replace that for you. I have specific tools on my own phones that are AI-based for translation, because my job is to explore every tool and every avenue out there to see how we can assist folks. And so far, the tools are helpful, and I use them as a supplement, but not as a substitute. I have found a multitude of mistakes and a multitude of non-linguistic relevance, like we mentioned earlier, where the point might get across, but in a way that's more roundabout than just having somebody who understands your cultural way, right? So I have some criticisms of AI. I do think it's a powerful tool, and we have embedded some tools into our own Salt Lake City government websites, for example, that I can show you, in fact, throughout this. But we do not rely on it just yet. That is something that we're still exploring. I think we have some time before we think about using that on a more full-time basis. So I like where technology is going, but I'm wary of what it could mean in terms of actual participation.
And if you're talking about meaningful access, right, that's not necessarily gonna create meaningful access.
Exactly.
It was interesting hearing them talk about it a little bit. They were using it for a diplomacy angle, that you could have people virtually from two sides of the world speaking to each other and in real time, having it translated for them, that the technology's not there yet, but where within a year of having it be functional. I was like, wow, that's a,
That's,
AI
that's a
is
little terrifying.
moving fast. If you look at, this is kind of a side note now, but if you look at some of the tools that are happening like OpenAI, ChatGPT, just last year it was in its infancy, quote unquote, 2022, and now it's on version like 4.0. That's how fast it's already advancing. So definitely there's gonna be some applications for it, we just have to be cautious of how we're gonna do that, exactly to your point, to provide meaningful access.
sorry for getting you off on a tangent. That
No.
was interesting that I thought you might have some insight into that.
I love just in general talking about language, and so whenever it comes to any tools about that, I will nerd out with anybody, so please. So I mentioned it's folks civil rights to do so. In the Civil Rights Act of 1964, there's a bunch of different titles that refer to different types of discrimination that are possible. Title VI refers to the prohibition of discrimination on the basis of race, color, national origin, and that extends to the languages that people speak. So in order for us to comply with Title VI, we have to have a language access plan in place, which we do. Also, Executive Order 13166 requires all federal agencies and federal sponsored projects to provide, or at least have systems in place to provide the same information that we have in English into other languages. That doesn't mean that everything has to be translated all the time, it just means, do we have a system in place when it's requested or when it's necessary? At this point, we do, but it's an ongoing process, of course. Next slide, please. So we've taken federal language and state language and created our own Salt Lake City policy. And the policy itself reads as is. I'll read the middle paragraph there. Salt Lake City's policies provide timely, meaningful language access to services or programs to members of the public who have a limited ability to speak, understand, read, or write English. The city will inform members of the public that language assistance services are available. To that end, we have created a language access plan that is about 20-something page document that we have continuously been created that says how we're going to do that. It identifies different points of contact in the city of all of our different departments. So one individual or a group of folks within the department that knows how to request interpreters, that knows how to send a document for translation, or that work with me to gather more information and more data to make sure that we provide accurate information, right? Aside from that, it outlines who counts as a public-facing department, so that way we know if you're likely to face the public, here's all the tools that you need, right? Versus some folks are not public-facing necessarily, they do internal workings, they have different sort of language access plan than those who do face public. Some of this includes having to add, for example, telephone messages. If you've ever heard of, for English press 1, for Spanish press 2, that is part of the language access plan, for example, right? We're trying to work on getting a certain percentage of folks within the city of employees to speak a multitude of languages that is representative of the languages that Salt Lake City has. So that way it matches what's out there and we can try to have as many folks as possible available to them for that human connection that we mentioned just a moment ago.
Chris, question. What data are you using to know what languages there are in the city? I'm just curious, like is there data, is it just census data or what?
So in just a moment, I'll explain which languages we have, but to answer that question, we use 3 different sources. Number 1 is the US Census, and so they do kind of what they call a community service, so you can zoom in essentially to each city, to each community. So we use that. We also use our own Salt Lake City Justice Court system. They have folks who are constantly coming in and requesting languages, so keep track of that and let us know in the mayor's office what those languages are so I can update how much of that is happening. And number 3, we work with Salt Lake City School District, which is a huge resource for us in terms of what languages are happening. They're usually the first to know, right? A lot of times when we get, especially newer communities such as refugees or immigrants who are still learning English, they may not be letting us know immediately what language needs they have, but if their kids are in school, the teachers and the administration is going to know. So we really rely on them to let us know what the changing demographic is. So those are our 3 main sources. We also gather from just general requests in the office, phone calls that come in, et cetera. Those are our main data sources.
So Chris,
Yes.
if a member of this community who is from, let's say, Tanzania, wanted to attend this meeting as a member of the public, and only spoke Kiswahili, didn't speak English, would we have an obligation to provide an interpreter and translator for that person to participate in this meeting?
Correct. So that means if that individual requests that, or if we feel there's a need, the official policy doesn't say that it's a requirement. It says that when we share information has to be provided in their language.
However, for instance, if you were putting on this PowerPoint, if such a person were here, would you have to have a version of this PowerPoint in Kiswahili?
Or have an interpreter who has seen the presentation ahead of time and prepared to translate, or to interpret at the same time.
And the city has resources available to it to provide those for, okay,
We do. And same in just a moment, I will outline some of the contracts that we have for folks to come in and do that. But we do have 8 different vendors throughout the city that are good for interpretation, translation, or other services within. And we have a dedicated language access budget to pay for this, okay?
If I recall, former
Yes.
commissioner, former member of the Human Rights Commission, Lulu Badori, was doing that specifically with outreach to the Muslim community. And they had a very, very specific regional dialect that they had to find somebody to translate for. They had to get on the phone, I think with somebody in like Montana or something like that, to be able to do translation for the person. So,
Yeah.
so that's the outlier case. Usually you're not gonna have a very, very obscure dialect, right?
Although it has happened, yeah.
It does have an occasion.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Silverman has a question online.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Yes.
hi, thank you. So I have a question. Are you doing some sort of regular checking to see if different departments, the public facing ones, are actually implementing the language access plan? So that, for example, if people call in and need interpretation, that they are getting the interpretation service on the line and providing those services. How are you assessing whether different departments are following the plan? And so that's my first question.
Yeah, so there's 2 parts to that question. The first is, we have a general citywide language access plan that I help implement throughout the city. And each division with the language access liaison, so that's the person identified as the point of contact per division, we create a catered language access plan for that division. So they add one section, essentially it's 1 page, to the plan itself, so that just kind of adds 16 different pages, 16 different departments in the city, well, 17 with the mayor's office. So that it shows what kind of documents they need to translate, what sort of events they plan, and how to prepare for an interpreter. And then aside from that, we have a tracking system where every time that they request something, they have to track it in a way that I have kind of already created. But I'm also the main billing person from the companies that we contract to translate and interpret. So I always get the invoice at the end of the day and I know who actually requested services and I keep track of that as well. So while there's still some clunkiness to that, I need to work out some details on how to make it a bit more efficient. We do have ways of tracking and so far it's worked out pretty well.
And are each of those departments budgeting for interpretation and translation services? Or is it sort of, there's one citywide budget, or are they responsible for their department's budget to make sure they include interpretation and translation services as part of that if they're public facing?
Yeah, in the citywide plan, it does say that each department and division has to have a language access budget set for that. The way it's working right now, though, is everybody uses the citywide budget first, and then it will go to them after the fact if they cannot cover it. Or if they choose not to go through to myself to request assistance to go directly to the vendor, they can just pay for it directly. I will still get that invoice at the end of the day. But for the most part, the hierarchy, I guess, of budget is language access budget, department budget.
Great, thank you so much. That sounds really like a great plan, because you're not just relying on them to say they're going to do it, but you're actually, you have the data to see who's using it, who's not. That's really great.
Thank you, and I know they're not here, but I want to give a shout out to the Salt Lake City Fire Department, because they're the ones who give me the most information. They tell me how many words were translated, they tell me how long it took to translate it. I mean, it's pretty robust. The others give me the basic information that I require, but they go above and beyond, so I just want to give them a quick shout out. So quickly, we have something that we've identified as vital documents. Excuse me. Vital documents are those that are required by law and or repeatedly used documents per department and division. So these are the kinds of documents that have to be translated, and some of these must be translated into Spanish regardless, and I'll show you why in just a moment. So these are emergency declarations, hazard notifications, property closures, complaint, consent, release, waiver forms. Sorry, I have my own notes here as well. Letters of notices about reduction, denial, termination of services or benefits, time-sensitive communications that relate to hearings, investigations, litigation, and emergency preparedness. So anything that might require a response from somebody whose English is limited or who's an English language learner must be translated into that target language. The reason being, just the example I like to give is, if we're cutting off somebody's water due to some construction or something like that, they need to know by when that's gonna happen and what they can do in the meantime, or resources are available to them. If we shut off their water and they call complaining, we have not done a due diligence to inform that community that that was happening. Thus, we just,
you know which language to communicate to them.
well, for one, we'll take requests, of course, someone says, I'd like to have this in my language, which is hit or miss because we never know if we're actually reaching. The second way is to use the census tool and kind of do that zoom in, like I said. I have some maps that are in the works, not 100% accurate, but getting there to which communities are likely to speak those languages.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, Chris, is if you're gonna shut somebody's water off, how do you know whether you need to communicate in Spanish or Arabic or Kiswahili or Russian or some other language?
And that's the difficult part, because we may not always get every individual all the time, but if we go to that community and say, hey, this community here is predominantly English speaking and Swahili, then we're gonna do every flyer in that community in Swahili. Or if it's,
Oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and I would, I mean, in my experience, communities like live close to each other. So the Burmese community, the Karen speaking community, they live, you know, in the Rose Park area, and that's helpful to know those things, but there's a large Somali speaking community in the old Heartland apartments by UMP. So, yeah, so there, people, the community knows who's, you know, who's where and in large part.
They can generally tell you also, as the person, if you go into like a largely Spanish speaking community, but you get somebody from Cape Verde who speaks Portuguese, everyone knows that person speaks Portuguese.
Right.
And you'll find out rather quickly.
Okay, and you have about 5 more minutes.
Okay, well, I think we can probably do that. So I just want to give you an outline of what vital documents are and how that works and things that we must translate, right? So just keep this out. Next slide, please. So this is the more interesting stuff, if you will. About 23.6% of people ages 5 and above, we don't measure 5 and above, speak a language other than English. This is in Salt Lake City proper. About 8% report that they do not speak English very well, and 14% of people in Salt Lake City speak Spanish accurately. So I think these are pretty large numbers. 14% is huge. 23.6 is close to 24%, which is about 25%, which is a quarter of the population. So that's how I like to think of it. It's a lot. Next slide, please. These are Salt Lake City's top 10 languages as of those 3 data sources that I mentioned earlier. Spanish, Chinese, Vietnamese, Arabic, Somali, Swahili, Karen, Burmese, French, Tongan. And in the greater Salt Lake area, these are the languages that have been increasing. They may not reach the levels of top 10 just yet, but have increased over the years. And that's the column on the right. It looks a little different because, again, it's just more and more people are speaking it, not necessarily that it's at the top. But I say greater Salt Lake because folks are always coming into the city for services, programs, and just to enjoy life in our capital city as well. So it's important to know what that looks like.
I stand corrected on this, but I get the impression that public education, while they're having their challenges with multiple languages, that they're doing a fairly decent job. But like I said, I stand corrected on it. What's your thoughts?
That education as a whole.
Yeah, as a whole, what public education is meeting the needs of multilingual students, citizens in general.
From my work with the Salt Lake City School District specifically, they do a really good job of tracking what languages are needed, but there's a lot of work to be done in how they provide services to those communities. So unfortunately, they do not have a lot of interpretation translation services. They still miss a lot of communities when it comes to events and marketing materials, things like that. Education itself is primarily still in English, unless it's like a dual immersion school, but even then it's a selected language, it's not the community's language necessarily. So I don't want to speak for them necessarily, but there's a lot that still needs to happen, but at least I get good information as to what languages are needed. You know, so in the city, we can provide more of that stuff that way.
Again, I will speak to that. I was the alternative language services coordinator for the Salt Lake School District for a few years. And I would say currently, the Salt Lake School District is doing a very poor job of supporting students of refugee background. Yeah, it's because Kathy's not there anymore. And I'm not there anymore. So there's a lot of work to be done.
Absolutely, and we can definitely chat more about what that is like. So I want to give you just a quick update on what are some of the current language access projects. So aside from general interpretation services and requests for translation and things like that, excuse me, here are some of the things I'm working on. In the policy, it says that our building, especially as the main place where the city lives, we have to translate all signs. So if you look outside, what you do this building, everything is in English, the director signs are in English. I'm working right now with the facilities folks to update all of that. First of all, to update them in English, because some of them are old, and then translate those into Spanish primarily. And I'm going to put on the directory sign in the top 5 languages to request your language, please contact, so on and so on. And the only reason we're not doing everything in all languages, for one, there's no room on things, but 2, it's for cost purposes, and also the policy that we created says Spanish is a must, the rest by request. So we're just following the policy there, but my ideal goal is eventually to have as many as possible, be as welcoming as possible, but baby steps.
How about augmented reality?
I think that would be great. I think, so something that, for example, Google already does that, where you can put your phone up to something in a different language or in English, select the language you want, and in real time, you're looking at it in that language, right?
Well, I was meaning more along the lines where you use the GPS, where you have like a checkpoint where somebody can hold it up and be in, or virtually be in all the different languages.
I mean, I know of that technology. I'll have to see what we can do to implement something like that. The only other step we have to take there is to now provide trainings and information on how to use that.
So I'm just thinking, if you can hunt Pokemon all over the place, why can't you have a sign in a language?
That is what I'm gonna use when I propose that, thank you so much. A few of the other projects we're working on is a citywide glossary. So commonly used terms in the city, government lingo, et cetera, department names. I want to translate to multiple languages. It's already been done in Spanish and ongoing, of course, we're always adding. And this just makes it easy so that we're across the board, across the entire city services, it's the same information consistently. So somebody's not just making up a name for the housing division, but it's always housing division in every language, right? I'm building a website, it's already there, but it needs some work, which is gonna be where we store all this information, including best practices, how to request, how to do, so that everyone has access to it, it's not just me providing trainings. And Title VI, as I mentioned earlier, Michelle and I are actually building a new procedure for folks who have felt that they're discriminated against or have some sort of complaint against the city, so that we know how to resolve those issues, and it has a proper investigation process, because it could be a violation of civil rights, and so we want to avoid that, so now we're creating a more robust process to do so. As part of the trainings that I was mentioning earlier, there are 16 departments in the city, 28 identified language liaisons within that. 11 of those have been completed as of this month. In other words, full training, full information, full documents. I have 10 more scheduled. There's a few others I need to work out how that's going to happen. Each department has their own individual needs. For example, the airport is not going to look like the community neighborhoods division, because they might have event suppliers versus the airport has immediate interpretation needs 24 hours a day, right? So we have to cater them differently. Next slide, please. And I believe this is the last one. So how do we do this? We have a number of tools available, and I just brought a couple as an example. There's a lot more, but again, for time's sake, I'm going to keep it to one. We use one of our vendors called Language Line. They provide tools such as this. This is a little desk stand that people can have at their front desk when they walk in, or at a meeting like this, for example. And if somebody comes in who's not communicating in English, they can point to their language. And what it says is, point to your language, an interpreter will call, the interpreter is provided at no cost to you. So we also have to inform folks that they are not responsible for their own interpretation and that they do not have to pay. So it says it right then and there. If somebody points to it, you say, oh, you speak Punjabi. Let me call this 1-800 number that's listed right here on the back, or I have this laminated form that is saying laminated. Or they call right away, within about a minute or so, you have an interpreter on the phone and you're speaking via speakerphone that way. There's also an app that we use where you can have a video person, somebody speaking that way. That's usually a bit more useful for folks who need ASL, but can also be used for other local languages. We have embedded stuff into our website, Google Translate. We have just so many different tools available. And of course, everyone in the city knows to contact me as well as a resource. I can either I have a running list of folks in the city who speak other languages, so I can find another employee, or I can connect them to the services that we have. So this is just a couple examples of what we do. And what I do in general is I provide recommendations for what languages we need to do per communities, what sort of documents need to look like. We need to verify if that's a viable document, like the ones I mentioned earlier, best practices, and then as I said too, just to geek out about language stuff, I'm happy to just do that anytime. So, next one, please. I think that's it. Yeah, just 5. So, in a 25-minute nutshell, that is language access. There is way more to discuss and a lot more things that are happening that I'd be excited to share, but I wanted to simplify it for today just so that we can get a good understanding of it. Are any final questions or comments?
So I remember when the language access coordinator position was created a few years ago. And, come a long ways in a very short amount of time, so it's very impressive.
Yeah.
We're going to have a wish list of things to look at in the future. Commissioner Stoll and I are also on the West Side Coalition. We hosted a community event a couple of weeks ago, and a huge portion of the budget went towards translation, real-time translation for Spanish speakers. Because we're trying to lower the barriers on the West Side to try to get more participation. It's just that language barrier seems to keep people out of getting more active and participating in the communities. But the West Side Coalition we're on has the ability to do that. Individual groups like community councils or other community-based organizations, it'd be cost prohibitive for them. So big vision, wish list, and the future, the city would be able to do outreach to community events like that, provide translation services. So community groups are having to try to scrounge up $2,000–$3,000 a pop for every community that they want to do. That would be great. I mean, we're talking probably years down the road, but you gotta have goals.
Absolutely, and I know we've talked a little bit about how we can support as a city and as a city council support community councils as well, because you're right, they can't always take that amount of money. It does cost quite a bit to have people there. So conversations have started. I don't know that we have a outlined vision just yet, but we know that we need.
I have a question. Did any of this exist before COVID? Do you know?
In the city or just?
In the
like
city.
access? Okay.
In the city?
We've had a few of these contracts from the state for a number of years now, but in terms of having a language access plan, that is about 2 years old.
Yeah.
So this came through, the gaps were really made clear during COVID, because more people said, well, we have to accept virtually now, and there's no resources.
Right.
And so that's when it really said we have to grab this up.
Good, thank you.
Any final thoughts online?
I think this is great. I'm actually just sending you an email right now, Chris. Just to find out how I can personally help. I speak a different language, a Nigerian dialect, and I know friends who speak a range of languages, and just having that, just on your Rolodex or whatever, in case you ever need it, would be good to know. So that is what I'm sending you right now. I will try to list some of them. But just letting you know, you can call in. I mean, I'm sure there's some commissioners here who speak a different language that would be willing to help if you are ever in a bind. Okay, that's it. Good job. This is great to see.
I appreciate that. I'll look out for that message and we'll stay in touch.
Mhm.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. This is nice. It's having been working with community for a long time that didn't have access to see this is just incredible. So thank you for the work you're doing.
I have one question, Chris. It's a little bit aside from this, but to me, it does relate to language access, is that many of the communities, especially newcomers who came as refugees, have very limited literacy in any language, not just in English, but in their native language. So I guess, is that part of what you're doing as well, is working with the departments to make sure that documents and things are produced, you know, at a level that is accessible regardless of the language, but more on the kind of, you know, is it written in a complicated way, or is it more simple so that it, number one, it can be more easily translated, but also can help for people who have more limited literacy?
Right, so this is something that we've started to see more and more of. Actually, our police department is the ones who kind of brought this to our attention more so. I knew it was an issue, but I didn't know how much of an issue it was. So the police department were talking to folks in the community, and they were using the iSpeak cards, and people who were not literate in even their own language could not identify their language. So we've had to resort to different tools to try to figure out what's going on there. But right now, we're having a conversation about creating a symbol-based system with actually the same company, Language Line. They've already started to do this for us. I don't know what's going to look like just yet, but there is a system to do so. And aside from that, going back to your comment, Commissioner Chair, there is some tools that we want to use, like Google Translate or other AI tools, or something called Talking Translator, where somebody's speaking into their phone or device and it automatically detects what language that is, so you can then follow the same steps. That's not been fully vetted yet, and I don't know the accuracy of it completely, but we do know that there's going to be a need for that more and more.
One thing, oh, sorry, Jen, just one thing I would say when working to develop any kind of system for pre-literate individuals, I would really encourage you to work with programs that specialize in that. One is with the English Skills Learning Center and at the Humanitarian Center, because one thing is, like, for us, we're used to abstract symbols as literate people, and we can distinguish, especially like things that are drawn versus photographs. If we see something that's a symbol, we can distinguish it from writing. But for people who are not literate, it's just a bunch of lines. And so a drawing that for us indicates a bathroom, you know, or a person, we can easily distinguish that from written language. But if you're not literate, lines are lines. And so I would encourage you to, there are some really good specialists in working with pre-literate individuals in the ESL community here in Salt Lake, and they might have some really good suggestions as well.
Thank you. I'd be excited to connect with you a little more on that and who I can reach out to directly, because again, that is something that's happening
More than happy. I have a background in ESL and linguistics as well, so happy to work with you on that.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
And Chris, also, I would encourage you to work with the communities. Like, I think about, there's an African leaders community. They meet regularly, they speak a number of different languages amongst each other, but they would be able to give great tips on, you know, what their experience has been and where gaps may exist that maybe you might not be aware. And of course, there are other community leaders. I just know that that group exists and they meet regularly.
Absolutely.
Thank you again. We've already covered item 5 on the agenda, the Human Rights Day update. Before we go to item 6, I'll say, I think item 7, that's probably gonna be discussed in 6, and there's not really an update, so I think we can, with discretion, probably scratch item 7 from the agenda, unless there's something specific on the subcommittees that we need to discuss. Michelle, do you know?
No, because we're trying to do away with some committees.
So yeah, so I think 7 can probably be scratched from the agenda. And unless somebody has something pressing they want to discuss on world issues or dialogue about human rights, I would entertain that we skip that this week so you guys can focus entirely on discussing vision and future goals for the rest of this meeting. Does anybody have an objection to that? All right, so then, if we're all agreed, then let's go dive into item number 6 on the agenda, the strategy planning session. This will be an in-depth discussion on the vision and future goals of the commission. I'm going to try to stay out of this conversation as much as possible because after December, I'm gone. So this is for you guys, how you're going to move forward. And the last few years have felt like crisis control to me because we've had COVID and we're trying to rebuild. So I'm just really excited to see what you guys can do with something now that there's some stability and you guys are almost at full strength. So with this, I will believe that both Jill and David took really extensive notes for the retreat. So I would recommend that you guys kind of give us a little refresher on what was discussed and then maybe start brainstorming from there.
Oh, there's a specific thing we're gonna,
Oh, okay, so that's, got a plan?
because we touched base on that last month. But yes, Esther made a slideshow that I just need your opinion on. And it's gonna be a visual for just what we were talking about last month, because there are action items and I do wanna get us out by 7 o'clock. And we do need to come up with recommendations for the report so I can start drafting it. So we will move to this. These were the proposed changes. I didn't feel like I got kind of a unanimous, yes, we put a vote to it, but I wanna make sure that we all understand what this means for the commission. So Esther, thank you for doing this. So this is our current schedule. We have, it's not truly, well, July is truly off because we have no meeting and usually I don't require too much of you all. December, we just have no meeting, but we have Human Rights Day. So this is the current schedule as it stands. So if we propose quarterly meetings, and I have one for bi-monthly meetings as well, so this is what it would look like. We would have a meeting in January, April, July, and October. I just wanted you all to see what this looks like, and then we can discuss what months might be better, or what month will be best for you all to be off. Because now I think in the past, July was just automatically off. I don't know if that's, I feel like August people were still traveling. And I know we can't accommodate everybody, but I wanna hear from you all, what you all think. If I was to give you a month off, what month would that be? Because December is truly not off.
Well, if we have quarterly meetings, are we getting 2 months off?
You're not off in those 2 months. You're doing actual work, so on the sides here, there would be, originally, I think we were assuming with quarterly meetings, there would be 4 community engagement events. I wanna make it more realistic, so I'm aiming for 2 to 4. Even if we do 2, like, that's great, like, 1 every 6 months or something. But in the time for the other, in the remainder time, what we all discussed at the retreat, right? Working with other city departments, commissioners can listen in. Do you all wanna go to boards and commission meetings, other ones, to see how you can have that human rights lens?
Right.
City council transmittal review, right? And then, well, the planning of the celebration, that does kind of come on me, but of course I give you all updates, but if you want more of an active role in that as well, by all means.
If we can just have a general discussion about this, you know, cut through the formality.
I'll point out, 4th of July almost always interferes with the meeting. If you're gonna have a July meeting, if it's a quarterly meeting that falls in July, the 4th will almost always interfere.
If we're.
And this is just a visual, right? So,
Right, if we're doing it on the first Tuesdays of each of those quarters for those months, I agree with Jason. The July meeting will be a problem because it'll almost always be over the 4th of July.
Well, we can always just move the July, around the first week and just do it the second week
Yes.
to make that work or not have a meeting at all.
Also, Esther, if we're changing the schedule, we don't have to, unless it's a problem for you, Michelle,
what do you mean?
we don't have to be wedded to the first Tuesday.
I think that might be an ordinance, I don't have it in front of me. But if, I know with election day, in November, we're not meeting on the first Tuesday. That's
Right.
before Salt Lake City changed or is it Utah, changed the election date. So those are things we are mindful of. It was on November 7th, so we could have had our meeting back, but now I think they're voting around Thanksgiving, so that was the purpose with that, because clearly it's a mere election year, we don't, yes. So,
So you think we're restricted by ordinance to
I-
the first Tuesday of the month?
It's bylaws, I don't
She'll
I
look
don't
into
know.
that and get back to us.
yes, I will look into that. If you all think July is a perfect month off, then I will respect that. But then I don't really know what you all think, that's what I care about, do you all want July off? Like, has that been working? I know some of you joined after July, so you might not.
Look, my attitude is there are always going to be some personal things,
Right,
vacations, deaths in the family, weddings, all of those things that are gonna interfere once in a while. Right? But we also have a virtual option, so that gives us more flexibility, we don't always have to be here in person either. What I like about this change, to meet as a group quarterly rather than every month, is that if we do our work and actually do some of the things in the interim periods, we can then come back together and report to each other. And if decisions need to be made about next steps, after those reports, we can make those decisions when we meet quarterly.
do we all wanna see the bi-monthly one? The bi-monthly is what I think, or every other month, that's what was voted upon last month. But I know it was a long discussion, right, everyone was just trying to go home.
Yeah, let's look at it.
Let's look at it, right? And I'm just doing it, we can change, this is flexible, right? So any month that has a meeting, we can move it to the next month, it's not, I just need to know. So this is what this kind of looks like.
March.
But remember, we're still, no one is truly off. I wanna emphasize that.
Right.
That was,
We're doing more
yes,
focused work
yes,
on our own without a formal meeting structure.
yes. And I will make a point person, instead of subcommittees, I'm thinking, okay, David, if you're passionate about homelessness, okay, I will check in with you, whatever you guys think, bi-weekly check-ins, depending on the task. If we have something urgent, then I'll probably follow up every week. And that gives me more flexibility to do that, because I'm not planning a meeting every month. I'm connecting with you all more.
Right.
And making sure, I think that's better than the subcommittees. Everybody pick on a project and you kind of lead that project or
like that
department.
I like that, do you like that, Will?
I like that with stuff.
Yeah. So,
Because then we can work independently, we can work at our own
It kind of
schedule.
gives us
Yeah.
more flexibility to do the work, I feel like, a little bit, yeah.
yeah, so like Chris being here to present, if somebody wanted to take on language access, then you have more time to schedule meetings with work with the people you need to work with. We don't all need to see each other unless we're really truly voting. And yeah, doing business, I can still bring presenters in, but I think I brought a lot of presenters this year that I can connect you with people better.
And Moana's idea for the subcommittees was based on all the work was basically being done by the chair and vice chair, and nobody else was participating. So the subcommittees, I think, was Moana's attempt to try to get the other members of the commission actively involved on topics they were passionate about. Just
Right.
never quite materialized that way.
So this will be like project management based. I will know what each of the commissioners agreed to do, and I will follow up with that. Ashley Lickley, our ADA coordinator, this is what she does they don't have subcommittees on the Accessibility and Disability Commission. They have projects or tasks that they have, and she follows up with them as needed.
I like the concept,
Yeah, I think.
and I think my suggestion would be that we meet bi-monthly.
Okay, I'm for
To
that.
start out, and if it looks like we're getting if it looks like the meetings are not productive and useful, and that we would be better off quarterly, we can always move to quarterly. But I would prefer to have, at least initially, more meetings than fewer meetings.
In my experience, just various boards and commissions, quarterly ones, it just allows too much time for things to drift.
Yeah.
And if you're only seeing each other once every 3 months, very little work gets done between the meetings.
Besides, meeting every other month puts a little pressure on all of us to get stuff done in the interim, because we know next month we have to report on it.
Yes. And, oh, I have 4 events here, but as much as I want you all to be in the community, I don't think by February, I mean, unless you all think by February, I think that's what we discussed last month too. I think that February was a little bit unrealistic to see how this works. So if we could do bi-monthly meetings and aim for 2 community forums, or even 1, because this is new, right? So same with the ABC now, they're doing a disability community forum in their October meeting. So one of that, we could do that too. One of our bi-monthly meetings can be a forum, we invite people. It's different from public comment, right? Because we don't know who comes in from the public. We're actually inviting people in the community and having them come to this event, and it will help shape your end of year report and what you want to recommend, right? Because I'll show you the end of year report. I have that pulled up too that they did last year, the commission did last year. And you all can kind of see, because now it'll look different without subcommittees.
If I can propose something, this is just kind of a brainstorming idea, but Westside Coalition's trying to do several community outreach events every year. And the leadership team was just talking about having one specifically focused on homelessness in the not too distant future. We just did one on education, candidate forum. I think our next one on the agenda is going to be homelessness. I can recommend that we partner with the Human Rights Commission, and you guys could help us. I'm still here for a little while. Maybe do a partnership where the first event be partnering with Westside Coalition on homelessness outreach. So it'd be kind of like training wheels for.
What month are they doing that?
We're just transitioning out of one public event and one to the next one, so I gotta talk to Charlotte. But since it's in its inkling, very beginning phases, it might work for Human Rights Commission.
Let's talk about what other organizations out there might be doing something similar. What about the Downtown Alliance, the Westside Coalition, as you mentioned? Trying to think what other organizations would do that. What about League of Women Voters? Do they conduct anything like this? Of open forums to generate ideas and hear comments from the community?
Well, they sort of, they're doing a bunch of general meetings where they present things and they have people make comments and they have a discussion.
Do they have a schedule of events that they've got planned out for the next year or so?
No, not that long out that I've seen. I mean, we have something planned in October and then we have something in September. You know, where they talked about the I-15 expansion. Now they're talking about HTRCs in October.
Well, keying off of Jason's idea,
I've got the leadership meeting for the Westside Coalition on Thursday, so I'll bring that idea with them, see what they think.
yeah,
Email everybody.
but it would be nice to know what other community organizations are planning these outreach events and what the focus is of those events. So how do we find that out?
Great question. I don't know, but I do wanna make this less of a planning, I do wanna get your insight on this, but can we follow up on that? Because if someone wants to just take the lead for that community engagement event, they would just have to figure out who they want to partner with. It's more of an individual task at that point. You know, that's kind of what I'm trying to move toward.
I see, okay.
With the commission's insight, but I think I want you all to be creative, I want you all to feel empowered. it doesn't all have to be in the mayor's office, like you all probably have more leeway than I do being a mayor's staff member, and I want you all to think creatively with the Human Rights Commission, and what we can be now. So with the meetings, just to keep us here on the meetings, are we still, now that we're seeing it, in agreement with the bi-monthly? And we already did a formal vote, and then, but I know you weren't here, David, so that's nice that you agree with the bi-monthly too. So can we stick with this? And I'm hearing July will be off, is what the request would be. And then we would have, so think of this with the visual, right? Pink, the July will change to a pink. August, we'll still keep this format, but what I'm thinking is then you all have August to kind of, because I want July to be a true off. Like I want you all to do what you all need to do. That's how we have it. That's how we have been having it, with no subcommittees, no meetings, no nothing. You all can just enjoy it. But then August, we have to come back to that independent work. So June, we would have independent work, and August, independent work, but of course, follow up communications with myself and with whoever you need to pull in to make your vision come to life. And then we'll be back in September with the formal public meeting again.
But basically,
Let's see, don't meet between May and
so
September.
we're not meeting over the summer at all.
Yeah, but there's still work to be done. So that's what, I wanna really emphasize this because.
I know.
So July will be truly off, but in June, if we need updates in between, all I know is that November meeting is the best because we do vote on the end of year report. With the quarterly, it would have been in October, and this is October now, and you can see that I have no draft of this year's report. We haven't got to that point. So I'd like that November, and we also vote on Human Rights Day nominations too.
I would suggest that you meet in June or August, move, just because a 4-month gap between meetings is
Don't
huge.
we?
I'd say, no, you do meet, you don't go between May and September between meetings. That's just a
Yeah.
long time.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just bi-monthly.
Is there any
So
way
there's-
we could just, if it's
Why
just a
not?
thing, could we vote to change the bylaws for July, just to move it to the second week in July, and just not take it?
Or we could do the off month of August, since we weren't gonna be meeting anyway, so instead of having the off month be one where we would be meeting, what if we did the off month be August, where we're not holding any public, forums or anything that month, and so that way we're not going quite as long because we weren't meeting anyway.
That's up to you all. What I'm hearing is that July was I don't know, you all seem,
I'm okay, as long as we don't conflict with July 4th or the 24th. So,
okay,
I'm
is that a
okay with
consensus?
I'm okay with being in July too, just I think the first to the.
yeah, I think maybe we can just meet the second week in July rather than the first, that's okay.
In the past, when we've had to move, it's just a regular vote at the table, so it must not be written into the
Yeah, that's
ordinance,
not-
it must be written into the bylaws.
As long as when I publish the annual schedule, this is there. Like, I don't think for the November meeting, we voted on it. I think I was just like, it's election day. That's what Moana told me she's done in the past. July 30, why would we make you all come in on July 4th? We can move it to the next. That's a reasonable cause, in my opinion.
Right, yeah.
It's not like it's.
So my proposal or motion would be to keep this bi-monthly schedule as it is.
Okay,
Keep the meeting in July, but just not have it conflict with either July 4th or the 24th.
and you all would want August off.
You're big on this, having a month off.
You don't have to. I don't wanna take away I don't wanna. It depends on you all, that's why I'm asking.
I think we should not have it off, and then we can evaluate later on if we want to take a month off as we kind of get out of this.
Okay.
That's my suggestion.
I'm speaking for myself, but even on the off months, I'm not gonna be working 40 hours a week on this every week.
Okay,
all right? I'm just
So
not-
this is what I'm
I'm
publishing.
gonna do what's needed to be done, you know, but it's not 40 hours a week. I'm not an employee of the city like you are, right? So I'm not doing it every single day. I've got other stuff to do.
Okay, so this is, I will publish everything in blue, because all of our public meetings need to be published.
Right.
Okay. And then I'll put.
Can I just add to this discussion? We're talking about language access, and I think that in this discussion, we're looking at the pink as off months. And I think we need to rephrase that as in just non-meeting months or something. Because off seems to have that connotation that we're actually not gonna be doing anything, but we are. So we'll just call our pink months our community months, where we go out and do those things, but just so that that whole notion of off is not there. Cause I feel like we're gonna be doing more work in those months, more, you know, like going out and sitting with people and listening to them. Like those listening sessions could be like up to 4 hours or something. Just the
sure.
planning, getting there and everything else.
So,
Hey, well, why don't we just call them working sessions?
Yes, that's what I'm gonna note it on
Working
the-
sessions.
meeting
Yeah.
months and work.
Yeah.
Those are our
Yeah.
working sessions. Thank you.
Okay. So that's what I will list it at. It aligns with city council and how they run as well. They have work sessions. So that's what I will note on the annual review. I mean, on the annual schedule that I have to publish.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we all feel good about that.
If you are going to make a big emphasis on getting looped in on when stuff gets transmitted from the mayor's office to the city council, that happens at random times, so you've got to have some kind of mechanism in place where you guys confer online to discuss it, to review it and discuss it.
Yes, we will discuss more of the specifics. Just in this quick 5-ish minutes, I do want to show you the end of year report from last year. Just to see your thoughts on what we need to do going into next year. So.
She's looking that up, so on the topic of, so when something gets transmitted from the mayor's office to the city council, things start moving really fast. So if you guys want to start reviewing it, as soon as you receive that, you're gonna have to have a designated person who reads through it, sees if it's human rights angle. If there is, you probably have less than a week to confer before you would be able to legitimately be able to move forward and inject yourself into that conversation. So,
Is there a culture that exists here where before things get transmitted from the mayor's office to city council, that they come to the Human Rights Commission?
that's kind of been this way where they come and they present to us of what they're showing us their work product.
Uh-huh.
But I get the impression you guys want to see it more polished and be ready. Get it more towards the end rather than towards the beginning. Based on that retreat. Yeah, like with the fight, for example. Go ahead.
And you all would know this because if you pick a department you wanna work with, you can work with them more one-on-one. I can assure you that if something's not polished yet or there yet, they will not come and present at a public meeting. But they would be more inclined to meet with you all one-on-one and get your perspective ahead of time. So that's what I'm gonna provide a process for.
I will say that as like this thriving in place.
Yes.
We were involved with that from the very beginning all the way through to now, for 2 years, so.
And they're the only ones that asked to come back. Every other meeting, every person that came, I asked them to come and present. So that's something to be, I don't think departments know that yet, but that's why I want you all to know those connections, like this is what the HRC can offer you all. So on this end of year report, you can see that it's gonna look a little different, right? Because now these subcommittees when I'm formulating it for this year, maybe we won't organize it by subcommittees, but maybe by topics. And these are all the things that the commission was able to complete last year. It may not look like this, and it was a heavy lift for CEDAW, of course, getting that passed. Homelessness, these are kind of the same things that were completed or basically in progress now. I don't think we worked on too much of the best practices. I think you all tried, but I think with that presentation, it's very hard with this, just the state, the county, it's very hard for you all. I think you did ask questions on that. So for the end of year report and what I kind of want to get at, so what I'm gonna need, and I can come up with the review of what we did this year, and I will present that to you all. What I want to hear from you all is this part, the recommendations and priorities for 2023. So CEDAW is already gonna be something that will come back, that this will be run by the Chief Equity Officer and the Mayor's office. However, they will come back to the HRC, so you all will still have a role in this. This is gonna be probably a heavy lift on myself and Chief Equity Officer. With the subcommittees kind of going away, are there any recommendations or priorities you want for next year? I know from the retreat, you all wanna get more into policy, right, and reviewing that. Is that a fair statement? Working with, now what I'm saying is, it'll be more general, like it won't be by subcommittee. I would just make a list of things
It
that
won't
you
be
all
by
want.
subcommittee, but it should be by topic.
Topic, yes.
Should be by topic.
Do you all
Yeah.
have topics? What do you?
Well,
I think
some-
homelessness should definitely be
Okay,
on the table, because this is an ongoing thing. I see the city working towards trying to find solutions, because at this point, it's not just a solution, it's because it's so complex. So homelessness still needs to be on the table. We have air quality issue in Salt Lake. We are in the bowl. That should be an ongoing thing. I want to also say the inland port should be on this table, because there's a lot of human rights issues that may be part of that discussion. For instance, all that the West Side will be dealing with the amount of if like the air quality and things aren't being addressed, that like all that pollution will still be there. We have the Great Salt Lake. The first people that the dust or whatever will hit will be the West Side residents. So like there's those things I think needs to continue to be on the table for discussion. And then Salt Lake is, and I'm just throwing things out there, by all means. It doesn't have to be, written in stone. Just the things that I'm observing. We've talked about language access. A lot is still happening because Utah is experiencing growth, and that growth comes with a lot of diversity. We just took in during the Ukraine war, I think a lot of refugees came here from there. So that's something that we need to talk about. There's a lot of, Utah is kind of open to taking in refugees. How is that? How are we supporting them? What are some things that we're just not thinking about because we've never had people from, that side of the country here. So there's a lot that needs to go on these topics for discussion. I see the children and youth advocacy here. That was especially important to me because, again, I have younger children, and I am seeing there's a huge discussion right now about daycare and how people aren't being able to afford daycare and I was one of those people, when in California, I remember feeling like all my paycheck just went down to paying for the daycare. And then it was like, what was the point of working? So there's a lot of that's happening also in Salt Lake now, trying to change that. Another thing could be just women in leadership, more minorities in leadership. So there's a lot in my head, but that doesn't have to be the end of that list.
Well, and I think, oh, sorry,
was just gonna point out though, that, I mean, there's a lot of topics, but for the last 2 years, looking at this list, it's mostly been just you and I doing almost all of them.
Yeah.
So I think that it might be best if you and I are no longer going to be here next year, that we let each person who is going to be here pick a topic that they're passionate about to take lead on.
Yeah. So I'm giving you all this as examples so that you don't feel limited in what you can do. So there's a
Obviously.
range of topics that you can choose from. You can even add more that you're personally interested in, and it, have the drive to move it forward.
I think also though, one of the goals that we have said about having the community listening sessions and going out and meeting with different communities is to let the topics be driven by the community. So I would like to see kind of maybe a list of topics that we are interested in and concerned about, but then also sort of cross-cutting strategies. So the listening sessions, the transmittal of the city council or the mayor's, policy recommendations that we're going to be weighing into them. We don't know what topics that's going to bring to the surface. So I feel like we can have like maybe a list of topics and then almost like strategies that will help us identify other topics that come to the surface that are not specific to a topic, because the listening sessions and the policy review will really have topics emerge from those.
I like that a lot.
Well, that's a good suggestion, that itself can be a topic. Right, community engagement and receiving input from the community on issues that are of importance, that itself can be a topic. And the other topic that came to mind as Esther was going through her list was affordable housing.
It's like a gentrification.
Well, yeah, gentrification is sort of a broad term, but really the micro term is affordable housing, especially for families.
With those 22 points coming out of the Thriving Place study, that's going to be a major emphasis that the city is focusing on for the future, for the next year or two.
Well, and it affects zoning and a lot of other things that impact the city.
Okay.
But here's the other thing I want to mention. If we bite off more than we can chew, we won't really be effective. So I think we have a nice long list now. We need to pare it down so that every member of the commission focuses on one of them. Or maybe two things. But if we try to do everything, we'll be spread so thin, we probably won't do anything well.
That's a good point. I think that we're over time now, so I would recommend that everybody take some time to think about the one thing that you want to take a lead on, and maybe set a deadline in a week. Send an email, a group email out where everybody lays out their one topic they want to focus on, and try to organize it that way. Does that sound acceptable to everyone?
But with the topic, I would say come up with action items. It's one thing these are easy to list the topics, but what do you want to do with that topic? Because that's the recommendations we will have. The priorities we will have.
So let's have the topic and then what you want to achieve over the course of the next year in that topic.
Yes.
And then we can take this conversation online, and that way, if two people are really passionate about one thing, perhaps you can team up on it and then come up with a second topic to team up on. I don't know, I'm just spitballing here, but because we can, as the retreat showed, we can keep talking about this in circles for another hour, 2 hours, 3 days if we wanted to. So that's my recommendation.
So Michelle, can you do this for us? Send us last year's report in Word.
In Word?
In Word, so we can make modifications, suggest modifications.
Okay, I think, okay.
It's gotta be,
Yeah, I have to look in the
it's either
documents,
Word
because I
or
think
Word
I
Perfect, but I doubt you're using Word Perfect anymore.
I think I saved it as PDFs when they were finalized, because that's
You
when I
send it to
showed
me in a
you.
PDF and I can convert it to Word.
We
Yeah.
do have a shared Google Drive that I don't know if anybody even remembers how to access it anymore.
I don't think we're using that too much. We have to move off of Google for the city and move towards Teams.
So, but if you wanna send it to me, I probably have it somewhere here, but it'd be easier to just resend it, I can convert it to Word, then I can edit it in Word. It's a lot easier than editing it in PDF format.
Okay, but I'm gonna have a different template than.
Okay, well,
for
then,
those changes.
well, if you're gonna update it, send us whatever you're gonna update, and we'll give you some comments about it. But also send us the list of these topics we talked about, so that we can then look at it and say, yeah, I wanna do homelessness, I wanna do affordable housing, I wanna do, racial equity in policing or in government services, municipalities, whatever it is in that sense, and then we can decide, yeah, this is something I'll take on as a member of the commission, and here's how I propose to address that topic in these work sessions.
So I think you're saying the more formalized structure, what I was just recommending that we do with, through email.
Right. Yes, so before I can draft something, these topics were just what Esther was throwing out. So if you all, I'll send up, how about this, a follow-up email. You all respond to the email with even 3 topics that you think you would be interested in. Because you don't know if it might take you, with the time that we don't have meetings, you don't know how quickly you would work. This is our first time trying it, so at least you know different things. Because that's what I'm using to draft the report. And then we can go back and be like, what is feasible, what is not. This report was all drafted based on what the subcommittees did last year, so it's kind of hard this year. But I will send you at least what we completed this, like the first part of it.
So as a refresher, maybe send out last year's end-of-year report.
Yes, I'll still send
And
that.
that way we can get ideas for how it's structured on the accomplishments last year.
Yes.
And then the appendix was the goals for this year and several years into the future, like a 5-year plan. So that might give you some ideas of what you want to put in the appendix for this year's end-of-year report. And you'll obviously be able to see that we didn't achieve half of the things that we set out last year, so it's not binding or anything.
It's just goals, right? And if you all wanna hear from the community, that's great. It's just we didn't get to do that this year, so it's kind of like, we have to start with something, we just have to start with something. And then, of course, this is now your goal and it can change.
Unfortunately, Brandon, probably, we wanted to really emphasize homelessness, but then the Salt Lake Valley Commission did homelessness, went into a reorg, took half the year. So there wasn't a whole lot of stuff going on. But anyway, yeah, productive meeting. I don't want to keep anybody longer, we're already 10 minutes past. Anybody have final thoughts that they want to contribute, or should we entertain a motion to adjourn?
I've got a quick question. For the next meeting, you said you're having something to present, but are we gonna be talking more about this at the
Oh, the next meeting is only focused on the end of year report, like we have to go on this, it has to be transmitted to city council.
Okay, awesome. Is there gonna be time before the end of the year to talk more about this?
Sorry, what was
Is there gonna
that?
be time before the end of the year to talk more about this?
Talk about what specifically?
Like just strategic and these broader conversations we're having?
It'll have to be online.
It will have to be, yeah, so I will start with, if you give me some time to just even start like a rough draft of what I'm thinking at least with this year's accomplishments, and I'll attach last year's report, then you all can make that a working document. Cause then, yes, I could start it in a document.
And I
David,
I
so,
I believe next meeting, we're gonna have to vote on the award recipients.
right, but that will be.
Do we have any nominees yet?
I haven't checked. But I can let you all know. I think you all sharing it would be great as well. But I've been doing my part. It's been in the newsletter for the last 2 months and it's going again this month, as well as going on social media tomorrow is what I was told.
I may have missed this. Where can I find that? I mean, just for.
She sent the email out,
So it's on, do you have the calendar invite? Because I want it just in one place, so if you're ever looking for it again, just go to December 2nd, calendar invite, and all the links are there.
okay, hyperlinks at the bottom.
Michelle, which social
Yeah.
media are you putting it on? Because then we can share it on our own social media. Are you gonna be putting it on, which ones are you putting it on?
The mayor's office is what the communications team is doing. I don't know if it's a post or a story though. So,
Are we able to have like other organizations sharing this, like, would it-
Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody can share this is open, this
So
is
it's
not like,
okay.
you all don't have to do the work, but if you know some people that you want to even be nominated, then go ahead. I think last year was a heavy lift from the commissioners to nominate people, but it doesn't have to be that way. Like I'm talking about it at community council meetings that have allowed me to for this month and November as well. Okay.
All right, so entertain a motion to adjourn.
I was so moved.
All right. Commissioner Leda has made the motion. Is there
I'll
a
second
second?
that one.
Okay, Commissioner Eric Lynn has seconded. We are adjourned.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Let's.
A quick thank you